Now, let's see what are the uses of SIP, or what are the functions of the SIP protocol, or what we can use the SIP protocol in. As I said, the SIP protocol is the protocol that I will use in the IMS network nodes. So the network nodes themselves can communicate with each other. Now, if we look at them here, the first thing that happens is used to control the multimedia sessions, which means when you initiate a call on the IMS network on Volte, or doing a Volte call, who will control this call? Now, who will control this call? It is the SIP protocol. But during this call, what management will happen in this call, or it will happen by what exactly? It will happen by some SIP messages that go from network node to other network nodes. Now, someone wanting to make a conference call, for example, someone that wants to put a specific announcement, or someone wanting to make a ringback tone. And all of these, how do they work by the SIP protocol? By SIP messages that go from one network node to another network node. Now, the second function for SIP protocol is locate users' SIP mobility. As the SIP protocol, we use it to see where the B number is. And if this B number moved from place to place, so he has to register where he is now. And all this happens by SIP messages that flow between network nodes and each other. The SIP user may enter the SIP network or the IMS network, as he might enter this network by using the mobile or desktop or laptop. So the SIP's function is to help identify if this person is working by UE user equipment or mobile or handset or desktop or with a laptop, for example. So these are from the functions of SIP as well, as it tells me, firstly, where this person is, secondly, the identifier or his identity. Now, the third function for SIP protocol is establish users' presence details, in which the SIP protocol allows the network nodes to store the user's profiles. As we said, if a subscriber attaches on a specific network node, so he can use this network node, so he can start a call or end a call or whatever he's going to do. This node has to store the subscriber profile. And how will it store it? It will store it by sending SIP message or SIP request to the HSS, and the HSS will respond to it by the profile of this subscriber. So here we also use the SIP, so we can establish the user presence. We use the SIP so we can establish the user presence details or user profile. So you send a command or request that you want to store the profile of the subscriber. And also, I use it when the user initiates a call or phone call. The first thing the nodes do is to look at the user initiating service, as it sees if this user is allowed to make a call or not. Is he barred or not? Did he pay his bill or not? All these are SIP messages or SIP requests that happen before the call starts or during the call setup procedures. And who does this exactly? it is the SIP protocol. Now, the last function of SIP is set up, modify, and tear down user sessions, which is, as we said, for me as a subscriber to do a call, this call will be done by some SIP messages that will be sent between the network nodes and each other, and between the user and network. After these messages are sent and completed, so here I did a setup for the call by the SIP protocol or the SIP messages that I sent between the network node and the user and network. Now I initiated the call by SIP, and after the call is complete and the two subscribers talked to each other, and now they want to close, we then do teardown to this session, as we must close this session. As so, if there is another subscriber available, we can give him this session so he can do his call on it. Who does this teardown? The same SIP messages, as the network nodes send SIP messages between each other and between the user and network, so we can tear down the call. During the session, as now I initiated or did the setup for the call between the two users, there is speech traffic flowing between them. There has to be a modification, as modification can happen during the call. Let's say as one user can decide, for example, to get another user in a conference call with them. And this will happen by a SIP request sent in the network or in the IMS network. And this is what we call modify. So the SIP can do modify, setup, and tear down, as setup is when it initiates the call, and modify is where it can modify in this session itself, and tear down is where it closes the call or releases the call. So all of these are the main functions of the SIP protocol. Okay. Now, let's see the benefits of SIP. Why did we use SIP in the first place? We had TDM and big protocol, as these were also used to initiate the call. If there was a voice call, they could initiate it and tear down it as well. But why did I go to SIP? I'll tell you. But for who doesn't know the TDM, it was the structure that we used that was called the Isup Protocol, or the ISUP protocol, in which this was the protocol used mainly in 2G and 3G networks. So we can establish or initiate a call between two subscribers. And the two subscribers, if you remember, in the core of 2G and 3G networks, they were initiated by the two MSCs, as one subscriber was registered on MSC1 and the second subscriber was registered on MSC2. And so I can initiate the call between the two subscribers. There has to be an Isup protocol between the two MSCs. And this Isup protocol was the one controlling the messages that were formed between the two MSCs. So we can initiate the call between the two subscribers they have. And this is in 2G and 3G, of course. And we can also use between 2G and 3G the connection between the two MSCs over IP. And in this case, we use another protocol called the BIC protocol, which was an abbreviation for Bearer Independent Call Control Protocol. in which it was used to control the setup again between the two subscribers on the two MSCs, but in case the connection between them is only over IP. But connection in Isup, or physical connection between them, is through TDM-E1. And TDM-E1 is like a cable that is connected between the nodes and each other. So this call is established by this cable, unlike the big protocol, which is over IP. But now SIP is the connection between the two network nodes that will initiate the call over IP as well. Now let's see why we don't use the TDM or Isup or big protocols, and why we prefer SIP over TDM and big. Now, the first thing is that the SIP protocol is less complex and more flexible. And why we say this is because SIP was first introduced, or when SIP was first introduced to the world, it proved that it is less complex than Isup and BIC, as Isup and BIC are more complex as they have many parameters, unlike the SIP. When we explain the scenarios, you will see the difference, the mobile originating and terminating, as you will find a huge difference between a call established by the Isup protocol and a call established by the BIC protocol and a call established by SIP. SIP is more easier and less complex and shows more flexibility. And it is flexible by providing new services to the users. As the mobile operators, the most important thing to them is satisfying their users or clients by providing more service, always evolving and providing new services. So the client gets impressed and buys more. But what helped me, or actually them, do this? It is the SIP protocol, as it gives more flexibility to provide new services to my subscribers. Okay. Now, second thing is the SIP dominance, or what I call the SIP dominance, in which the old mobile operator that we used to call the public switching telephone network, or the PSTN, or in other words, the landlines, they started declining a bit, as no one is actually using cords for calls anymore. We all talk in our mobiles. So around the world, these companies, or the landline numbers, started to get dismantled, which means it is almost ending or deteriorating anyway. And now the alternative for this was going to the Isup and BIC, and the future was making calls over IP. As now the future is initiating everything over IP. The best model for IP now is the SIP, and that's why SIP started dominating. And soon you will find most of the operators around the world are now using SIP-based networks, as the communication between the network nodes and each other are done by SIP protocol. And that's what we call SIP dominance. Now, the third benefit for SIP protocol, that it is the vendor's most used solution, in which now the mobile operators, or any mobile company that provides mobile service, like Vodafone, for example, so they can provide this service, they get in contact with some vendors, like getting the MSC from Ericsson, for example, and the media gateway from Huawei, and the BSC from Nokia, and BTS from Ericsson, as they don't have their own manufacturing, in other words, all right? So they get everything from specific vendors, like the MSC from Ericsson, BTS from another provider, BSC from Nokia. It really depends because Vodafone and these providers don't manufacture themselves. So a company like Vodafone can't get an MSC manufactured by Vodafone, as this MSC is from a specific vendor. And this is the same that happens with IMS. IMS, for example, if I said, I have a network node like CSCF or MTAS, or HSS, or PCRF. Each one of these, each mobile operator decides to get them from Ericsson or Huawei or Nokia, for example. And some operators get all these network nodes from one vendor. And other operators, to decrease the cost, for example, they get these nodes from different vendors. Now, what happened is most of these vendors went to SIP. So if I'm going to give you these nodes or these network nodes on your network, so this CSF works by SIP. So by this, they forced the mobile operators to work by SIP as well. So if you get a CSCF and the CSCF is working by SIP, I'm giving you an example, of course. And at the same time, you need to attach the CSCF to your network by EPC or Evolved Packet Core, which is the core in 4G. So you have to connect it by SIP. So it can understand the EPC, which is the Evolved Packet Core. So since the vendor's most used solution is now SIP, so it is now forcing the mobile operators that the most used protocol to use is the SIP protocol. Now, the fourth benefit here is, or function for the SIP, now the SIP started ruling the cloud, which means that most of the companies now are using cloud-based services. As if you want to store something, you store it on a cloud. And all the services and devices, their nodes are attached to the cloud, and they are connected by SIP. And that's why we said SIP is the ruling the cloud at the moment. Fifth thing is user benefit from SIP networking. As we said, by using SIP, you are increasing the services you are giving this user. So this is a benefit for the user himself. And the service I'll give this user is for a low price because the cost of SIP, when you integrate it in the network, its price is actually low. So since the SIP price is low, the service you will offer is for a lower price. But if you integrated your network with something of high price, you provide the service with a higher price, of course. So now you gave the user more services with lower costs. So now the user can use voicemail, video calls, conference calls, send SMS, as all of these are features the user will use with a lower price. So instead of paying 10x, for example, he's going to pay 2 or 3x, which is better, of course, for the users or subscribers. Last but not least, in the benefits of SIP is, as we said, the SIP is used to establish the call or voice call between the two users and each other. And after establishing the voice call, it will start doing modification during the session being done, or wants to increase a conference party call, or wants to increase or add a ringtone, as all of these are by SIP protocol. And in the end, it terminates the user session, as when the two users are finished their call. We want to close the session between them as the SIP protocol closes this session. So these are the benefits of SIP protocol. And all of this is just an introduction to SIP. So then we can actually go through the IMS. Now, on a high level, or generally speaking, if we talk about the SIP protocol, the SIP protocol is a user that sends a request to a specific server, and the server replies with a server response. And the main purpose of this to happen is that, or to deliver media or speech traffic. The SIP messages do not carry or deliver speech traffic, but they carry or deliver something called the SDP, which is the Session Description Protocol. And just please don't get confused. I'm just talking generally. When I tell you more details, you will know how this all works. I'm just showing you everything from above, then you will know all the details within the course. So the SIP message contains signaling, control, and also contains the SDP, which is the Session Description Protocol. And from its name, as the SDP describes how the speech traffic looks like. Is it a voice call? Is it a video call? Is it a conference call? And the codec I will use, what type will be exactly? All of this is described in the SDP, again, which is the Session Description Protocol. As the request that is sent has two things. First is the STP protocol messages. And the second thing is the SDP, which is the Session Description Protocol, as I describe the speech or media traffic. When it comes out, how will it look like?